Hello and welcome to the Pittsburgh Podcast Network. Here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter here with Abby Schnable. We're your college beat writers here at the Post-Gazette, and we are getting you ready for the NFL draft from the Pitt perspective as far as which Pitt Panthers could be selected in the NFL draft. Of course, the draft is Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. If you want to join us for our live thoughts on the draft, you can do so with our live stream, which will be available both Thursday and Friday evenings. We'll be recording live from Mike's Beer Bar. Join us live at Mike's Beer Bar, our current sponsor of this show and many of our shows here on the podcast network. Mike's Beer Bar is located across the street from PNC Park on Federal Street in the North Shore. It's an amazing place with over 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are from the local area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap. We'll be there live streaming the event. So even if you can't make it, join us on YouTube, Facebook Live, or Twitter, and we will have live stream events where you can interact with us, get your questions answered on air, and keep talking that thing. But let's talk about the Pitt prospects that are set up to be in this NFL draft. Abby, you and I were at the pro day for Pitt back in March, and this is an interesting year because the last two NFL drafts, Pitt has had back-to-back years where there was a first-round pick. Last year it was Kalijah Cansey. The year before that it was Kenny Pickett. That was history. That will not continue this year, though. And that is not a slight upon this Pitt draft class because I think there are still a potential to have a good Pitt draft class here. And I think it's going to be interesting to see where some guys go. And I also think that there are some players, some guys at other positions, whether it's offensive line, receiver, or cornerback, that have put them in a good position to be drafted a little bit higher than maybe some projected at the start of the draft process.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got guys like Bub Means, who really has stepped up. I mean, I think he was always going to get drafted, but I think his draft stock really jumped up with the NFL Combine. But that's not to say guys like Matt Goncalves, who didn't get to participate in the Combine, his stock honestly hasn't changed. He's still projected to be the first guy and for Pitt. But you also got guys down the list like A.J. Woods, who may not be drafted, but is likely to get a free agent spot. And I think that's what's kind of cool about this draft year is while there is no like certainty, like, oh, this guy's going first round, there are a lot of guys that could sneak in there.
Absolutely. And let's lead off about Matt Goncalves, where Matt Goncalves could have been higher on this list is if he didn't get injured at the start of the season. He had a lower body injury that kind of sidelined him after during the West Virginia game. He never was able to return. But Matt Goncalves went into this year as one of the more talked about players on this roster, as maybe the best player on this roster at some points because of his flexibility in the offensive line. During his time at Pitt, he played right tackle, right guard, left tackle. He was everywhere on the offensive line outside of center. And he's 6'6". He's huge. He's athletic. He didn't test great at the Combine, but that was because he was coming off of his injury. He even acknowledged that. You wrote about that in a great story that you all should go read at post-gazette.com featuring a spotlight on Matt Goncalves. But from when I look at offensive linemen, especially offensive linemen that aren't, getting picked in the first round, teams love versatile guys. And Matt Goncalves, if nothing else, is extremely versatile. You've seen his strength at the point of attack. You've seen his headiness. I talked to him at the Combine. He has a great head on his shoulders. I think there's a really good chance that he is drafted no later than the 4th. And I think there's an interesting chance for him to get drafted in the 3rd round because people are going to see that size, that flexibility between all the positions and say, hey, I can use an offensive lineman like that.
And I think what's cool is not only does he have the versatility, but he has a lot of college experience, which definitely benefits him heading into the draft. I mean, 5 seasons at Pitt, and like we said, got injured at the beginning of this past season, but that's 39 games over his past 4 seasons, 21 starts, including all 13 games in 2022. He's just a very solid player, both experience, versatility. He adds a lot to a potential NFL team. And what would be even cooler is if he gets drafted, when he gets drafted, because at this point, I don't think there are many people who aren't expecting him not to get drafted. He'll be the second, or it'll be back-to-back years for Pitt getting an offensive tackle drafted with Carter Warren going to the Jets last year. So that's pretty cool for the O-line at Pitt.
Absolutely, it is. It would also be if he's picked on the offensive line there, like you said, it's Carter Warren. And Carter Warren actually same path. Like Carter Warren was a longtime experienced offensive tackle who was really strong, really good, talked about, and then suffered an unfortunate injury that has sidelined him for an entire season. And Carter Warren went in the 4th round, which is where I think Goncalves could go this year. But the reason I give him a chance to maybe place up higher is because of that flexibility between positions, and that's something that should not be overlooked. So Pitt fans do get excited for the potential of Matt Goncalves going somewhere and getting decent playing time in the NFL, because when teams see that ability to slide in anywhere, they'll make you a backup, and then when that gives you more chances. Like when someone goes down for injury, you plug in, and if you do well, you find a way to stick in the NFL. And Pitt's also had a decent record of getting offensive linemen. Brian O'Neill was a 2nd-round pick back in 2018, and he has done great things for the Minnesota Vikings. He's a player that I think the Steelers wish they would have taken back then, to be on their offensive line. But let's talk about the potential of others behind Matt Goncalves, Abby, because if multiple Pitt players are selected in this draft, it will make the 4th year in a row that has happened. And there was a time where that was kind of hard to find, a streak like that for Pitt, especially recently. There was only one player, and Dane Jackson was selected in 2020. Only one player in Quadri Olson who was selected in 2019. There was a good stretch in 2017 and 2018, but only one player in 2016, Tyler Boyd. One player in 2015, TJ Clemens. And then there were some years like 2013, 2012, where nobody was selected. So this is, I think, another line of what Pitt can do. And they you hear guys like Archie Collins, the defensive backs coach for the team, tweet about, the path to the draft, because Pitt has started to put players in. I want to get to, I want to talk about Bub Means in a bit, but I want to talk to you about the defensive backs here, because you mentioned MJ Devonshire and A.J. Woods particularly. There's also Marquez Williams. We shouldn't leave him off the list. But I think Pitt has developed this reputation for sending in good defensive backs in late rounds that develop into decent players, namely Damari Mathis, who's played well for the Denver Broncos, and Damar Hamlin, who has become a star for other reasons for the Bills, but he started for the Bills before his unfortunate situation that he fortunately did survive. Dane Jackson has gotten decent starting time. Jordan Whitehead has gotten great starting time. Avonte Maddox has been good, and even a guy like Jason Pinnock, who, like A.J. Woods, wasn't the most talked about cornerback going into the draft, and then blew it up at Pitt Pro Day, and people were like, I want that guy on my team. When you look at MJ Devonshire, A.J. Woods, Marquez Williams, do you see the potential for these guys to maybe find some shine in the NFL?
Absolutely. I mean, just with the fact that all 3 of them were able to pretty much stand out for the defense last year, among a year that was pretty bad, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Like, they all 3 were able to make some noise, with MJ Devonshire kind of leading the charge. 2nd team all ACC honors, finished tied for 1st in the ACC with 14 passes defended, caught 4 picks, which was 2nd best in the ACC. He's high on my list, absolutely. And I think I know we were talking about this before we recorded. I think he's Pitt's 2nd guy picked, just in the draft. Like, I think he goes after Goncalves, because I think he really does add a lot to a team, because not only does he have 2 years at Pitt, but he did play, 3 seasons at Pitt. He played 2 seasons at Kentucky, which is just more experience. I think anytime you're able to show that you can adapt under a new coach in the middle kind of your career, that's beneficial, especially when you're looking at the NFL. He just adds a lot of speed to that spot too, in my opinion. And then when you look at a guy like A.J. Woods might miss out on the draft. He might, but I won't be surprised if he sneaks in, because similar to MJ Devonshire, he has just this kind of attack to the role. I mean, again, let's talk about another experienced guys. 59 games, starting in 14 of them, finished with 102 tackles, 2 sacks, 4 interceptions, 24 passes defended. Like, Pitt is good at developing their defensive backs, and these 2 are kind of the forefront of that. Now, I don't really see Marquez Williams getting drafted this year. However, I do see him getting picked up as a free agent, because I think NFL teams know that Pitt has a history of developing these defensive backs. And especially when you got a guy like Charlie Partridge, who used to coach these guys, now coaching in the NFL, it just adds a lot. I think it increases their draft stock a little bit.
It certainly does. Marquez Williams, I think he's in a tough situation because he's just a smaller body. In college, you can get away with that more on the outside. Like Marquez Williams is a dog. If you can get him in your secondary and he adjusts the NFL well, like I'd be scared of him in the secondary because I've seen Marquez Williams erase people from the field. And he also just has that temperament that you want from a cornerback in Marquez Williams. I think that he would be, if he could get a shot in the NFL and he could adjust and learn how to play with his size in the NFL, because he is a smaller body, I think that he would be a heck of a slot corner if he was put in the right situation. But I also acknowledge he didn't test too great at his pro day, so there's some hesitations there. But I think that if he can find a way into a training camp, someone will see in him like what the Steelers saw in Mike Hilton many years ago and back in 2017 when he earned a spot with the Steelers. And Marquez Williams, I think, would have a future there. But A.J. Woods, I don't think has to beat as many overlying, questions that Marquez Williams has, because A.J. Woods is 5'10", which is a decent size for a corner, and he tested extremely well. I went back and compared the relative athletic scores to him and Jason Pinnock. He was Woods was a 9.47, Pinnock was a 9.83. Pinnock tested amazing, and part of that 9.83 was also his size, because he hit a 4.49 40-yard dash. He was really explosive. He had a great vertical, great broad jump, but he was also a little over 6 foot and 200 pounds. So he was stockier, and people love that about him. A.J. Woods doesn't have the stocky or the height on his side. 5'10", bit shorter there, still decent enough for an outside corner in the NFL, and he also weighs 187. So he's a little bit on the lighter side, and I think that could count against him. However, what won't count against him is his speed. He ran a 4.39 at Pitt's Pro Day, which was fantastic. That's one of the better 40 times. I think it might have actually been the best cornerback 40 time that we've seen in this class. I may be wrong there. It's also different because he did it at a pro day versus a combine, and they always say add on X amount of tenths of a second or whatever, or hundredth of a second for pro days because of the different tracks. But either way, he tested extremely well there, had a really great vertical, decent broad jump, also was better than Pinnock in his shuttle and his three cone, showing his ability to flip directions and change well. Also, I reportedly impressed at the East-West Shrine Bowl, which is another thing that where coaches get to see these players up close and test them themselves. I would not be shocked if A.J. Woods was anywhere from a 5th to a 7th round pick this year from a team that's just like, hey, we need an athlete. We need a speedster. This guy at worst can be, a depth cornerback who can help on special teams. And that's where I think A.J. Woods may end up getting picked here and added to the list here. And then as for MJ Devonshire didn't test amazingly at the combine in the pro day. But guess what? People see his pedigree. People see him as a guy that did very well in college, took away some of the top receivers that Pitt faced over the past few years. Also a knack for making big plays, can return kicks and punts, can make big pick sixes, as we've seen him do at Pitt. People are going to love that about him, and MJ Devonshire is definitely going to be selected in this NFL draft. Also, the Aliquippa bloodline, man, that's just all those dudes that come from that area. There's something in the water with the quips that keeps getting them picked, and I think MJ Devonshire will definitely hear his name called. I think A.J. Woods would be another defensive back that could be called there as well.
I think what NFL coaches know is that they're not really like it's not taking a risk if you're picking a Pitt quarterback, because Pitt, again, like we've talked about, has a history of developing really strong quarterback or defensive backs that are able to come in and do well in the NFL, and that's what makes me high on Devonshire getting picked. Probably, I don't know. I think maybe 4th round. There's definitely 4 through 7 somewhere in there, but I'd say early in that range. And then the other guys are definitely they're not bad picks by any stretch of the imagination. You just listed out their stats. Like, look, they're comparable to some of the guys that are testing really well, and it'll just be exciting to see where they all end up.
Absolutely. Now I want to talk about the guy who I legitimately believe is the sleeper of this Pitt class, and that is none other than wide receiver Bub Means. I know you said MJ Devonshire is going to be the second Pitt player taken. I have heard many things that entice me to thinking it is going to be Bub Means who comes after Matt Goncalves. I still think Matt Goncalves is the first because I think of his flexibility at the offensive tackle position as well as guard and his size. I think a lot of teams are going to love that. But Bub Means, when I was at the combine, I talked to some people there who were salivating over the idea of getting Bub Means and saying like, man, he's a dog, man. He's 6'2". He's wiry. He's fast. He's strong. He plays special teams. He could be a gunner. He could be a returner. He could do all the things. I just love Bub Means. And that's where I think things could be really interesting is if teams do love Bub Means, if they want to, if teams want to look at him in a strong light. I think that he could end up getting a good shot here in this draft class. I'm a football junkie, so I listen to a lot of football opinions out there. And Mel Kiper's one of the more storied guys out there that's had a lot of experience around the NFL draft. And when I hear someone that Mel Kiper talks about on his show First Draft with ESPN, and I keep hearing that person's name, normally I take a look and I'm like, who is that guy? I need to know him for the Steelers because the Steelers might want to take that guy. But that guy this year, one of the guys he's hyped up a lot is Bub Means. And I'm sitting here like, I don't have to look up Bub Means. I know who Bub is. And I hear Mel Kiper being like, Bub Means. He's got that character to him. He's got that speed. He's got the 6'2" size. He runs great. He ran a 4.43 at his pro day. He is going to be a blazing speed. He brings everything to the table. He can go up and get the football. I don't think Phil that he had the right quarterback situation, but you've put him with the right quarterback situation in the NFL. He's going to do just great. Sorry, that was my best Mel Kiper. But point being, I think that Bub Means is a hidden gem in this draft. I'm not saying he's going to go on to become, Antonio Brown. Well, not crazy Antonio Brown. I'm talking about on the field talent Antonio Brown. I don't think he's going to go and do all that. But I think that when you look at his size, when you look at his speed, again, he's actually 6'1". I apologize for saying 6'2", but he's 6'1", 212, ran a 4.43, had a 39.5-inch vertical. All things that test very well with him right now. He outjumped Brian Thomas in the vertical, and Brian Thomas is a for sure first-round pick. Maybe even Brian Batko just had him picked in the top 12 of this draft class here. And he also has an inch and a half on Bub Means. I think that Bub is an underrated talent, and I think that a lot of NFL teams see that, and I think they're not going to hold it against him that he played with Keaton Slovis, Phil Jurkovec, Christian Veyer, and eventually Nate Yarnell. And although Nate Yarnell, I think, gave him some good opportunities at the end of the season, I think teams are starting to see through that when they look closer at Bub Means.
Well, and I think what's even talking about the quarterback struggles, and I think his numbers still are impressive for how just not great Pitt was with quarterbacks last year. I mean, when you look at it, 68 passes for 1,122 yards and 8 touchdowns. Again, not numbers that jump off the page by any stretch of the imagination, but for people who know what Pitt has been through the past 2 years, especially when it comes to quarterback, those numbers are pretty impressive.
Yes.
For the situation he was in. And I think a lot of these teams know that. Like you just gave your impression of what was his name, the
Mel Kiper Jr.
Mel Kiper, saying put him in a good quarterback situation, and then it's a completely not completely different player, but maybe he thrives a little bit more. And I don't think we've seen his ceiling yet, and I think he's only going to thrive more. I won't be surprised if he is the second Pitt player picked. I just think Devonshire is the safer pick for an NFL team, but Means by no stretch of the imagination is he'll hear his name. He'll hear his name, and even cooler for Pitt is, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my research, he'll be the first wide receiver drafted from Pitt in like 8 years or something like that. So impressive. Go ahead.
Officially, yes. Technically, Jordan Addison, kind of it doesn't count because he was from USC, but he's a Pitt developed talent. He even said H2P at the podium. But yeah, technically he would be. Quadri Ellison was a running back then. Yeah, you'd have to go back to Tyler Boyd. 11. That's pretty crazy. That's a great find by you. I didn't think about it that way, of a player coming straight out of Pitt as a wide receiver going to the NFL. And heck, Tyler Boyd worked out. So maybe there's something about those Pitt receivers. I also point out, Pitt may not be known officially as wide receiver U, but Pitt is tied for having the most Biletnikoff awards for best receiver in all of college football, with 3 between Antonio Bryant, Larry Fitzgerald, and now Jordan Addison as well. But yeah, I think that Bub Means, the one thing, I know there's some people out there saying, well, what about Jared Wayne? He had better numbers than Bub Means. And like, yes, but Jared Wayne didn't run the 40-yard dash time that Bub Means had.
That's the thing is, it's the combination of what he was able to do under two not great during quarterback struggles, but then the way he went into the NFL Combine and was like, hold my beer, and showed, like, blew a lot of people out the water. Hold my Mike's beer. Bar beer.
There you go.
And that's what's impressive to people is that, he may not have the best stats as a wide receiver coming out of college, but he said, yeah, let me show you what I can do and why I would be a good pick. And people took notice.
Absolutely. I want to go over, I don't want to ignore other potentials here. Now, I am going to say precursor here. All the names I'm about to say, I don't think will get drafted, just because when I talk to people that are other NFL draft experts and studying them, they don't bring their names up. But I would like to see some of these guys get shots in the NFL. I think Shane Simon is an underrated name. I think that when you look at his size, 6'2", 229, had a decent 40-yard dash of 4.63. That's not blazing, but that's good for a linebacker with his size. I think with his experience at Notre Dame and Pitt, he had a decent 3-cone time. I think that he could be a guy that maybe gets a training camp invite as an undrafted free agent guy and then just sees how he works out. And there's other guys, I think Jake Cradle, David Green, other guys like them that could get some opportunities somewhere at some point. But I also think that, Sibo Flemister is another guy, I think, with veteran experience that people need to take a look at. But I also think this is the perfect time to be a player like that coming from a program like Pitt, because now you have the UFL, and granted they're already underway in their season and they're doing things, but like you're going to have a chance to, if you're not invited to an NFL training camp, to train your butt off, get out there and prove yourself either in the UFL or the CFL, because there's always been the Canadian Football League, but there's limited spots over there as well. Now there are so many opportunities here in North America for football players to say, hey, I still got it. Give me a shot. And I think that's where some of these Pitt Panthers could get some opportunities if they stick with it, and I think some of them deserve it. I think Jake Cradle had a great career at Pitt as an experienced offensive lineman. He was a great contributor. He was part of that ACC championship run. David Green was a leader for the team and also a leader in the community for everything that he did. Sibo Flemister came in and was a solid veteran that stepped up in the running back room in a tough year this past season. I think that there's all these guys. Shane Simon was another guy who stepped up and kind of took over the linebacker role, and I think actually played well despite the Pitt's overall numbers this past year and a 3-9 record. All that to be said, those are guys I think, Tyler Bentley's also in this conversation, Malcolm Epps, another guy there, but I think these are all guys that will get looked at somewhere in the football world, but definitely just not on draft day. There's not enough buzz around their names now, but this is a great time to, if you're not getting buzz in the draft, keep working, keep grinding, go get yours, prove that you were overlooked and that you shouldn't have been in this draft process by proving it somewhere else. And then maybe you get that invite to come back and show what you got in the NFL.
Absolutely. I mean, I got to kind of go hands-on with it's the XFL and the what was the other league that combined?
UFL.
Okay, so they're just
USFL was the other one, yes. And now they're the UFL.
So I got to go and watch a practice of the USFL for a story I did last year, and those guys, it may not be NFL level, but they're training like they're
absolutely. They're still athletes. They're still great athletes.
Absolutely. And so I think that's what's exciting for this time for some of these young guys is it's not NFL or bust anymore. And the UFL is getting a lot of praise for what it's able to do. I mean, heck, my dad is not a football fan and he has season tickets to the St. Louis Battlehawks. So like I mean, it's helping build the football community, and it's giving opportunities to great players as well, and that'll be exciting to see for these guys who may be a little bummed that they don't go NFL, but they're still going to have their opportunities to prove that maybe they should be.
Absolutely. Those are our thoughts on this year's draft class of Pitt Panthers. There's quite a few of them that have a chance here. I think at least 3, maybe 4 get selected. But if 3 happen, great. If 4 happen, awesome year. And I think it's another feather in the cap of Pat Narduzzi's program and their ability to produce NFL talent. As always, thank you for tuning into our shows here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette podcast network, where you can tune in on your favorite podcasting app and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel and get all of of our daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers. And a reminder, join us live for our live stream of the show from Mike's Beer Bar Thursday and Friday nights from Mike's Beer Bar in the North Shore. Come experience what we're telling you is the best bar in Pittsburgh. You'll get to see me, Jason Mackey, Paul Zeiss, Joe Starkey. We're going to have a whole team of people there rotating in and out, giving you insights on the draft, who the Steelers are taking. Maybe we get to talk about some Pitt players if they get selected in those earlier rounds. All that there for Mike's Beer Bar. Thanks again for everyone for tuning in. I'll be back doing that live stream, and then we will have our Friday North Shore Drive podcast reacting to who the Steelers pick. We'll see you then here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's podcast network. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.